Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Yolanda and welcome to Unfiltered Me. So for today, this is the long anticipated video that honestly I've been waiting years to make, and today I'm telling you guys my story. And I have anticipated for this video for so long, and I think 2 days ago when I was in the store and there's this incident that happened, it just in a way like triggered this memory and reminded me, I went through a really huge life change this past summer in general, and especially now being a freshman in college. And yes, like there are some things that happened like in my childhood and all where it's just like, like now I'm not having to deal with those problems, but I don't want to forget about what happened. A huge thing that I told myself is that I wanted to use my story. I wanted to be the person to one day change how things are, or to in general like just advocate more for people that may be going through similar situations. So today this is my real and authentic, more lengthwise of a story of leaving the Mormon church and what really happened. I have made sugar-coated versions because of some reasons, and of course like being a minor, and this past summer like I really could have made it since I was able to leave, but there's just some things that I just wasn't able to. I was not going to tread lightly on that, but I am in a position now where I just want to say my story, and I feel like the truth is gonna come out one day. Today is when I tell you guys my story. Now there's a more further in-depth that's gonna come like probably like after college, because there's just some things, and especially still being young, like I just don't want to discuss yet, but I will tell you guys the main part, which is just me leaving the church. So I just, really hope, that, this can really just like, that I can be the voice, and to really, like you are not alone. For anybody who may be leaving, whether it may be the Mormon church or the Catholic or being Muslim. Like I know there's a lot of people that choose to go different paths than their parents. Like it is 100% okay, and we're all in our own different journeys, and it's not the end of the world. And I'm a living testament that it will be okay after the fact. Kind of just starting off, I'll give you guys a background. So basically, all my life I grew up being Mormon up until the age of 14-ish years old. I was born into the church, but I'm also black, y'all, so like I know like a lot more. It's a predominantly like white church, like let's be real, it's a predominantly white church, especially for the area I was in. There was a lot of white people, and so I know a lot of people that had like, oh yeah, like my mom and their grandma and like their great-grand whatever were like born into the church. But for my family dynamic, that's not the case. And basically my dad actually met my mom on his mission, and then he converted her family essentially. Now my extended family is into Mormon, but it's really just my aunt, my grandma, and then our immediate family for the most part. But other than that though, I'm pretty sure there's not really anybody else. Actually, it's really interesting though, but they're kind of like made fun of, or just like, oh, you're Mormon, like in the family. Like I remember like every time I'd go down to like Florida, which is like where we're from and all, it was just like, oh yeah, like they don't do this and that, they're Mormon. It was just like I don't know, like we were like the odd ones out in a bit. Like it was just, I don't know, I just felt different from the rest of my family members for some reason. He didn't have the most idealistic childhood, but I don't remember exactly how, but somehow he went to different churches and found that the Mormon church resonated with him. Eventually he converted, got baptized around 17, 18-ish age, and then later on, shortly after, to be honest, went on a mission. For guys it's 2-year missions, but for girls it's like a year to a year and a half, one of those two. I never understood why it was like that way, why it wasn't just the, both the same amount of years, but that's how that was like on the mission. So for my mom's side of the family, her parents were divorced, and so her mom was like a single mom, and they're at like a vulnerable place in their lives. And I think partly that also was like how easily they were able to like be converted, because it's like, you know, like you want to look for hope and something that, like, you know, and like the church, I mean, like, yes, there's a lot of things I disagree about the church, but one thing about, you know, some people that I do like is that they're really like helpful, and like they can cook good too though. I remember, I do miss my one teacher. She made these good cookies. I was like, oh my gosh. But you know, going through a hard time of life and really leaning on a community and finding with the Mormon church, that's what happened pretty much for them. And then she was actually supposed to, he left or something like that, but they would write letters to each other and stuff, and she was actually supposed to marry this white guy actually, and I was like, whoa, but ended up not being into white guys and ended up marrying my dad. And that's how my family, pretty much how me and my rest of my siblings were born Mormon into the church. Like, so we all grew up and were baptized at 8 years old, the whole 9 yards, baby blessing, all that stuff. And so just growing up, that was already like, you know, rough itself. And you know, for these little details of growing up, like it just wasn't like idealistic. Now there was good moments, but there was a lot of moments that have contributed to like my trauma and like just a lot of things that has happened in my life, especially recently in the past few months. And I think definitely the way I grew up is another reason that really tainted my view of the church though too. Now both of them tainted it separately, but together it even more tainted, you know, my view of the church. But I grew up there and I wanted to, you know, like be like, you know, your Molly Mormon, like the girl who dresses modestly and like, you know, is good and yada yada yada. And that's how like I was like in elementary. Like I was a quiet girl until like 3rd grade. That's when I started speaking up more. Like I used to cry in class, y'all, like if I didn't get my way. But then in middle school, you know, I started branching out a little bit more. But by this point, you know, your girl started to wear crop tops. But like I was starting to like get into boys a little bit, but that was like near like maybe like 7th grade, yeah, because that's when I unofficially but officially had my first boyfriend. But like by that point, you know, I started to notice a difference between me and my friends. I was just like, oh, they can do X, Y, and Z, but why can't I? And mind you, 7th grade was my last full year before in 8th grade, that's when COVID and all hit. And by this point, now I had a few friends that actually were going to this non-denominational church, and I was friends with them. I think it was definitely like meant to all happen. Like I think, like looking back, it was definitely like a seed planted by God. But I was friends with them, and I'm actually still friends with them today, and I go to school with actually 2 of them. But you know, sometimes I'd go to this church that was nearby me. It was a non-denominational. I remember like I'd go and my parents would be like, oh, like yeah, they're just like all showy and this and that, like it's not like a yada yada. Like I went to the church whenever they said I could only go whenever we didn't have church, and if it was like during a break. So I would go a few times. It'd be like cool and all that stuff. This is actually, I remember the last time I went to an event in middle school was actually like a Christmas event, and that's when I started listening to Maverick City music, and they played like Promises, and man, that song was just so good. But fast forward until 8th grade, and this is like when COVID hit, and you know, like COVID, like it affects us all differently. Like I never like had anybody like close that passed away. Like my grandma passed away, but like I would talk to her, but it would just be like really like once a year and all. Like I'm not really close with any of my relatives anymore like that, because well, it's either some of them are like, you know, Mormon, or just other ones they're just like far away. Like I have family like out the country and then in the country, but the ones that are in the country are mainly like out of state. So I don't really like, I know them, but like I'm just not close with like a lot of my cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff like that, because just, you know, like life happens and things like that nature. But yeah, so I remember like 8th grade year, so when COVID hit and all, just, you know, of course, like life just changed entirely. And by this point though, I remember my favorite YouTubers, and I used to watch Sydney Francis, Kaeleigh Everts, and potentially somebody else, but they started like leaving the church, and I was like, why? And as judgmental and all that I was like, oh, like, you know, just like, okay, they're not gonna go to heaven or whatever. I was just like, why would they do that? Like, you know, and mind you, like, you know, I grew up in the church, so like you know, just to hear somebody leaving, it was just like a whole taboo thing. And I know like how people would like speak about others. It would just be like, oh yeah, like they're leaving, they're lost, like, you know, we need to like pray for them and all this stuff so that they can return back. And I was just like so confused why she left. And then once I started hearing her reasonings though, I was like, huh, that's interesting. And I realized I was feeling the same way though too, but I was just in denial, if that makes sense. Hey guys, this is me editing, but basically I do want to make a good point is that I'm not saying like I based my decisions solely off of those influencers that I followed, but it definitely opened my eyes. And I think that's a huge aspect of the church, is that if you're going to give people a side, give them both sides and let them make a decision what seems right. Now in this video I don't go further into depth on doctrine and stuff like that, but it's just purely my experience and just like some things that made me want to leave. I do leave out some parts because this is such a long video. I could go into like modesty and like drinking stuff like coffee and everything that or just like doctrine and stuff of Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and yada yada yada. But mainly I'm just here to tell you guys my story, not like to tell you or to convince you why I think X, Y, and Z by the church, but purely just like, oh, going back to the part like I saw both sides and I just decided from there it just wasn't for me. And I think everybody should have that choice on for any religion or just anything in general when you go into it, is that you should see both sides and choose from there, knowing what you're getting yourself truly into. By this point, once again, like, you know, I was changing, I was going through so much, because this is like, you know, it turned into the time of being in 8th grade going to 9th grade, and I really like, you know, like I'm just young, I'm a teenager, you know, figuring out myself, what I want in life, who I am. I just realized I was just miserable, you know, and especially like with COVID on top of that, like I just felt so alone. I felt so like just, I don't know, like it just didn't feel right anymore, the church. And you know, if I'm being quite honest, you know, as I was in middle school though, it just became a lot, and it felt like my worth was just based on whether or not I was doing these things. It's just like I was going through the motions. It was never like genuinely like out of the goodness of my heart I wanted to do things for the church, if that makes sense. Like when you're in elementary and then when you're in middle school, they have like these two separate books. I don't know if they still have them right now, because once again, I don't keep up with the church like that anymore, but they have like these, there's called activity books, and then like there's this young woman's book. And I remember like I did all of that stuff. Like let me tell you guys, I poured out my heart into this church. I did everything, you know. Like I would always go to church, I would always be there at youth group, I'd be at all the combined girl and guy events. I would be heavily involved. I did choir with my mom, would pray all the time, like in lessons, like I would volunteer for that. I would go to the girls camps. I would once again, I said I completed the books. I would even sing and play the piano in front of the church, and just my family was heavily involved. But no matter how much I invested in all the things I did, I just felt empty. And I think with doing those things during like COVID though too, and hearing the stories from like the other girls and feeling how relatable that was, I just didn't feel good about myself, you know. I feel like it wasn't enough, and I feel like I was driving myself insane. But it was so hard, because it's just like, oh yeah, like if you don't do X, Y, and Z, then oh, are you even a good enough Mormon? And it's just like, I think also with the things going on at home, I just realized, like, you know, like, is this really what I want for my future, you know? Like, should, like, it shouldn't have to be this hard, you know? Religion should not have to be this hard. Like, yes, working for a relationship with Christ is gonna take work. It's not always gonna look the best, but, like, should I really be driving myself crazy and making, like, myself feel, like, so disgusted and just so, like, I don't know, if I miss church one Sunday because I'm sick, or if I'm not able to fast because I'm getting sick. I think the culture of just like shaming people if they don't do this and that and guilting them, like, oh yeah, like, or just even the culture of just like, you know, like that church culture where it's just like, oh yeah, like so and so did this and that, like, ooh, that's a sin, or oh, let me go tell the bishop, like, you know, like just that fear of like if somebody was to like, you know, snitch on me, or like am I even good enough compared to this other people. It just was a lot, you know. And it's like we're young, and it's just so much pressure, so much to ask for, and I was just driving myself crazy. And so like just know, like that's a huge thing. Just know I tried. I literally gave it my all for this church when I was completely in, up until I was 14 years old. And once that point when I started, you know, I went on a walk one day actually, and I remember I prayed to God. I remember it was just one day, and I love to walk around my neighborhood. I started falling in love with walks actually once I was in this neighborhood actually. So one day I just went on a walk, and I just prayed to the Lord, and I was just like, it's just for me, you know. And I was just like, no, you know, I just had that feeling. I literally have a clip. I need to go find it, but I was so sad, y'all. I was sobbing. I was just like, it just didn't feel right to me. And from that point on, I started gathering evidence, y'all. I read part, not all of it, but I read part of the CS letter. I started listening to other people's stories, and that's when I realized I was literally stuck in a cult, y'all. I literally didn't realize like how much of it, but it's just like just so many aspects of it. And I think, you know, the cherry on top of things was just even the prophet, because it was just like, how are you gonna give people counsel but you don't even know me? I feel like, you know, like you say, you know, you're praying to God and you're giving counsel to literally like okay, not billions, but like millions of people, right? And it's just like what may work for one person may not be the best for another person's situation, which is why I think it's so important now to like just get direct counsel from God, or like maybe like a leader that lives locally to you. But for somebody to like, I don't know, like there's a lot of controversial things some people have said where it's just like, even now as I'm hearing from some people close to me, I'm just like, yeah, like I'm glad that I left at the time I left. Like I really couldn't do it. But I started gathering all this evidence, and it just seemed right to me, and I felt so confident about it. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I'm gonna show all this evidence to my family and all, so that I could save them too, so that they can get out of this though. And mind you, also I'm the black sheep of the family, okay? Like not like, oh yeah, like I'm black and they're all white. No, like the black sheep meaning like I'm the one to stick up for myself, to just be like, hey, like no, or to be like, you're not gonna do this to me, X, Y, and Z. Not in a rebellious way, but because I have respect for myself, and I've been walked over, and especially like at my young age and some of the things that I went through, like I just don't stand for a lot of like things that happen, you know. Like I'll stand up against my parents and be like, no, like you're not gonna do this to me, like I am a human being, I'm a person, like you're not gonna, like, you know. And once again, like not in a disrespectful like, oh, like I'm, no, but once again, this is a part of the story that I can't share yet, and I don't think I'm ready to share with yet, but in the future I will 100% would. I remember I was gonna wait though, so this is like near June, and by this time we were actually moving into our new house, which is where currently I was at. If you guys see my videos from like literally May and before then, I was in that house, right? And so basically I remember it was after July 4th, and I think it was the 5th. It was because the 4th was on a Saturday, I believe, so then the 5th was on a Sunday. It was like that weekend of July 4th. I don't know if the dates are right, but basically after church, and then we had family home evening. And I remember I told my sister though too I was gonna do this, and we basically sit down, and I'm just like, yeah, so like I don't want to be part of the church. And when I tell you, like, my life was already chaotic beforehand, but when I tell you, this turned, and excuse my language, but into a living hell for the next, honestly, few years of my life up until now at this point. But my dad flipped out, okay? He like entirely flipped out, and I was just like, what? But like honestly, like was I really surprised? Like I mean, like there has been other things that has happened. Like am I really surprised that he's very close-minded? Immediately like his response was like, yeah, like, you know, pretty much like he was disowning me. And he said that like, yeah, you're gonna be out there like on the streets and giving out your body, like messing with every boy, and you're gonna go to hell and all this stuff, and how I'm just lost, and he no longer wants to support me, and that I'm gonna have to do everything on my own, and that, and he basically just like stormed off and just yelling. And then I remember my brother was there, and like, you know, it was just like, you know, he was just there, but like kind of like feed it in a little bit, or just like, you know, like that kind of talk where it's like the older sibling was just like, yeah, like she don't know what she doing, or just like the little, like, you know, subtle laugh, or just like, oh gosh, like, oh yeah, like low-key the instigator, if that makes sense. But then I remember my mom, she's just like, okay, let me hear you out. And then like I read her like all the stuff that I had, and just like the polygamy and like the Book of Mormon when it's translated and all this stuff. And I just had all my evidence. If I had it today, I would share with you guys. But just basically, I was just telling them both sides and just like how I was unhappy. And overall, she was trying to listen. And I know I wasn't able to articulate myself as best when I was there. But pretty much overall, like her response was just like, you know, of course trying to rebuttal it. And it was just like, she was kind of, I will admit, like she was kind of trying to calm him down for sure, but she was still like on his side, like, no, like, you know, this isn't true, yada yada. And then she's like, you're not gonna label yourself as like an ex-Mormon and yada yada yada. And I was just like, okay, whatever. And then basically I was just like, yeah, like I want to just step away from the church, but I don't want to participate, but I'll be there. I'll go to Bible study, which was called seminary. Also go to church, but I won't do anything extra outside of that. And that was that. I thought, you know, right? But that wasn't the case. And honestly, it was just like a living hell, if I'm being honest. Like I would go to church and I'd be in my phone, and usually sometimes I'd be in my phone and it was whatever, but like once, like, you know, I told them this, it was like a no, like put your phone down. And I'm just like, and sometimes I'll just like put my AirPods in church and nobody sees or whatever. It's literally just her, you know, trying to start things with me. She's just like, no, you need to be paying attention. I'm like, I don't even like believe in the same things or whatever. And then on the cherry on top was definitely like going to Bible study in the morning, and I would like lose sleep. And mind you, I'm a cross country track runner, so by this point I was doing, I think it was cross country season, and I was like losing a lot of sleep. And she's like, no, it's either you choose this, or I'm gonna take away your car and you're gonna ride the bus to school and you won't be able to like run, pretty much. And I was just like miserable, y'all. Now there's a whole bunch of things that happened. I will kind of scratch the surface, but a lot of things that happened that had not just started because of this, but things from like a year or two beforehand. But CPS, well, yeah, DFACS, the police, and just like a lot of things and people were involved. And overall, like I remember one day, like I was in my room and I just wasn't, I was so sad, yo. Like I was just like so trapped, and I was like, what has like my life turned into, you know? And I remember she came up to my room like after church, because I thought I had gotten away with it by not going, and she was like, if you don't go to church and all this stuff, that because okay, I had kind of briefly like left home, right? And so she was like, if you don't go to church, then I'm going to like turn you into the police for being a runaway, and I'm gonna ruin your future pretty much, and you won't be able to go to college, and you'll be stuck here forever. And she left, and I'm just like, that's just so disgusting, you know, the fact that you're preying on your child's downfall. Like I could never imagine being a mother and just being like, yes, I'm gonna ruin your future if you don't listen to me. Like that's just so like excessive and disgusting, to be honest. It's disgusting. And once again, like little things like that definitely contributed to it definitely painted even more tainted view of people in the church. Because yeah, and so basically it came to a point where I would still go to church, but like I would start leaving, you know, like I would leave and go to the bathroom for like 10 minutes and come back, and 10 minutes turned into an hour, and an hour turned into 2 hours. And then by the point I would start, like I would go sit in the bathroom, and then the bathroom turned into me like sitting for a while in classroom, and then sitting in the classroom turned into, and by this point I was driving though too, y'all. So by that point it just turned into me just sitting in the car and waiting like an hour. Then it turned into like both hours, and then it turned into me just like leaving early from church. And by that point, you know, I kind of like weaned out of actually being forced to be there. And then like it turned into a point where like finally my parents were like leaning with me, like not going. She was like, oh yeah, like if, because my dad didn't really care if I went to Bible study or not. It was really my mom. So she was like, oh, if you go to Bible study like 2 out of the 3 days in a week, then it's fine if you don't go to church, at least if you're getting something. But it was weird because during that time I was literally going to another church, so I'm just like, I'm literally still getting, you know, like church, because that was her big thing. She's like, I just need you to still, like, you know, like get something that's religious. And I get that point, you know, you want your kid to like have a relationship with God, of course, right? I was literally going to church, and I was like, I can literally show you my notes from church that I took, and they were really good notes. But she was like, no, like I still want you to go there. You can only go to the other church if you go to here though. And I'm just like, okay, because, you know, like that little hope of like, oh yeah, like my child coming back to the church and all. And so yeah, pretty much that happened. And you know, like things were like getting better. Like this is like a year past the point, y'all, but like just so much had happened. I remember even just one time, it was like regionals. This is my sophomore year of high school, and pretty much like I remember like I just convinced her to not go to Bible study. And basically I convinced her to not go to Bible study, and literally that week that I got sleep, literally when I tell you I won my region championship for the 800 meter. I PR'd big. It was a huge thing. I was on an article for Mile Split. It's like this runner's website, and it was just like a huge thing. And I was like, yeah, like look here, I got more sleep. I wonder what the correlation between that is, you know? And yeah, and so yeah, like things definitely like fizzled out and got better, but it was still just like, you know, like definitely tense in the household. But eventually like my parents in a sense got over it, but like not really. It was hard, man. I mean, like it's hard doing this alone, because no, even like my hopes going into it, like I hope that like, yeah, like my family, my parents and my siblings would like follow along with me, but that just wasn't the case. I was really alone in this. I don't know how I did it, but honestly I really do owe it to God, to be honest. I really do. And so just like a year after, like I was saying, how things died down, I eventually I did follow, you know, in life. I was in a really like just deep spot where I was just like, dang, like I'm really alone. And it just was a point where like hard time of my life, because I just really had nobody, y'all. Like I was so sad, and I was really leaning on my friends, but you know, there's only so much you can do. And so I fell, and I did a lot of things. I involved myself in things that I'm not proud of to this day. Let me say for shit. And it's not to be like, oh yeah, like I proved my dad right in any sense that like, oh yeah, like you're gonna do X, Y, and Z. No, because I refuse to ever like give him that satisfaction that like, hey, like I was right about X, Y, and Z. No. But I think I needed that though. Because the thing is, during this time I left the church and I had no interest of ever going back. Like I was really hurt, and I was like, yeah, why did God like allow for all of this to happen? I was so sad, y'all. I was just really going through it. And you know, like I would try going to church here and there, but it was never consistent. I remember I went to that church that actually those girls I told you about in middle school that I went with, I went to that church, but it was just like here and there. And then eventually I was just uninterested, because I was just like, I just can't do this. It was a lot though, you know. And so basically what happened was, yeah, I fell, and I started dating this guy senior year of high school, and it was a really unhealthy, toxic relationship, to be honest. And I was going through a lot, he was going through a lot, and we were just like both, I feel like we just both had a lot of trauma and things that happened to us. And it was really like a dependency type of relationship, and no hate, no shame to him, of course. It was just a lot though, you know. And I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of course. And because like once again, like he wasn't just all the problem. Like, you know, we both equally did things right to like really get at each other and spiteful and yada. But it wasn't until December-ish time, just for some reason I just had like the inclination to really like want to have a close relationship with God. I think it was definitely like one of my goals that I made for the new year coming in. And so basically that's what I did. I started going to that church, the one that was a planted seed that from my middle school friends. I started going there every day since like December, late December. I think it was like after Christmas. And I started like being with those girls, and being in community is such like a beautiful thing, to be honest. And I started getting really close, and then once that happened, I had another friend who was really trying to guide me, especially after the summer. So this is like going into like my senior year, of course, right? So that first semester before I started going to church, I started going to church December, but during that like August to December though, during that time, she's trying to get me, you know, to come back, but I was like, yeah. But then basically in January, after I started going to the church that I was going to, she invited me to this group and basically ever since like I went there, like I was nervous at first. I thought it was like a group for like girls who were like my age, but they were all college age girls. And I was like, oh, and I was nervous. Like I didn't tell people how old I was for like a solid like month or so, because I was like, what if they kick me out? But they ended up figuring out and not kicking me out. I was just like one of the only high school seniors there, but everybody else was like a freshman to being a senior, or just like 25, 26 in general. And I remember from that point, like I loved going to that group, and I really do miss them a lot. I miss them so much, y'all. I really do. Like it's such a good group of people. And I started going there on Sundays, and then I'd go to my church on Wednesdays there, and then I go to the other church with my friend on Tuesdays. And it was just a good time and everything, and I found a really good community. And during this time was also when I broke up with my boyfriend. We broke up January, but then officially, like, then we got back together like literally the next day, and then we broke up again February, and that was that. I haven't gone back since that point. But this is when I started really going like all in for God, and I was just very active and stuff, y'all, and I really grew that relationship with him. And I think what helped, like I was still kind of like nervous speaking up, but there was this one Sunday, and I think I shared this in the story with you guys, but basically how there's this older girl. Now she had already graduated college, but she was just there, and you know, I haven't seen her, Bob, but if you're watching this, Missy girl. But basically she was like, I think 26 years old or 25, and pretty much one day, like I remember it was during the lesson, and the college pastor, he was just like, yeah, so like, you know, like if you guys aren't really like the one to speak up in general, like this is your, like I want you guys to like pray this prayer pretty much. And that's what I did. And then when I tell you, like literally we go to small groups, and so I go with the girls. For some reason I'm just like usually I'd be like nervous to speak, but this one day after I prayed that prayer, like I didn't feel nervous. And so I remember I was just sitting there, I just spoke up, and I just started saying like, I think we were talking about like forgiveness or something like that, and just like how it just sometimes it's the thing I was trying to like, you know, forgive myself over, it just felt like it was still holding a burden on my heart. And after that, I think I was crying or something like that, I'm unsure, because this was like a hot minute ago. But I remember after that, the girl, she asked me if I could take her home, and I took her home. And basically because she wanted to go get milkshakes, so then we just started talking, and she just telling me that like, you know, we have to believe that he has forgiven us, and he truly will, and like be forgiven for the things like that had happened when I had fallen. So this was earlier that year, when I had really fallen, and you know, dive deep into like just rock bottom of my life, to be honest. We get to her house eventually, because she had read me some scriptures, and you know, we were just talking. And then we get to her house, and she starts praying for me after she reads a scripture. And then she just told me to pray when I get home. And so you know, one of my favorite prayer spots that I really do miss praying in is my car. And so basically I drove home, and I just sat there for like 10 minutes, and like when I tell you, like I poured out my heart to the Lord, y'all. I really did. And I just gave it all to him, and I was like, Lord, like, you know, I just want this off my heart, and I'm truly sorry. And when I tell you, like I was just sobbing and crying, and I just really felt him there. And ever since then, that really just, you know, was part of my story, part of like my testimony, like, you know, like how much like you're never too far away, and that he wants us, you know, even that broken girl who was just leaving the church, who thought that like God didn't love her and didn't want her, and that like just my life was over, but he still was there with open arms, you know, ready for me. And it was just a matter of time, and I don't think that would have not happened. I would have not been as willing to come to him if I just wasn't broken, if I wasn't put through those things that really hurt me and that really, you know, broke me in general and all. And you know, it's sad, you know, I tell you guys, I won't cry on camera, but like this is like low-key like valid-ish reason to cry. It wasn't easy, man, what I did that at a young age, y'all. Like I literally was 14 and I'm currently 18 years old, y'all. Like I went through hell getting out that church. The amount of things that have been said, like I remember one time I came back to church, it was like, oh yeah, look, the prodigal girl has returned, and I didn't even realize what he said until I went back home and I searched it up, and I was just like, that's just so like, ugh. The amount of like nights, like, you know, that I went to bed like crying, just literally wishing that like I wasn't here, or like that I could just feel the desire to want to be back in the Mormon church, and maybe my life could have been better and I would have not have to go through all of those things. But truly deep down, I am so grateful for it all. No matter how much hurt, no matter how hard it is, no matter the things that I'm going through right now that has like just, you know, because you know, like yes, things are better now, but there's still things that happen, you know, and things I'm trying to like heal from, of course. And like yes, you know, it has affected me so much in my life. I am so grateful for these trials. I'm so grateful for the things that has happened along the way. No matter how much it hurt me, no matter how much it broke me, because it led me to Christ, and I would not want it any other way. No other way at all. It sucks, you know, it really sucks what I went through, but I truly do believe that God is using my story. It has really given me so much strength, and to know who I am, and I feel like I'm meant to be that person, to really be an advocate for others, to really be the change, to be that voice for others also going through that same situation too. To know that you're not alone. And it's hard, it's really hard, especially like not having the support that, you know, you'd hope you'd have, especially from like your parents, you know. After that point of going to church, my senior year of high school, I just didn't go at all. I was supposed to, but I just stopped going second semester. My mom stopped caring pretty much. Life was, you know, going great and everything. Like it felt like things were normal, but not really. This isn't my place to say my story. I don't want to specify some things for their privacy, because I don't want to once again say their story. But basically, someone close to me wanted to step away from the church, and pretty much my parents blamed that influence on me. And by this point I was 17, and basically just once again all hell fell loose. I didn't know when they were going to do this, but to share my perspective of the story, I was pretty much just disowned. I was at church when this happened, and so I remember I went home because I started getting messages from my dad, and it was just awful. It's disgusting, you know, to ever say such things to like your own like kids, you know. Okay, so basically one of the first messages is, I don't know what you and they got going on with this manipulative nonsense about the church. You need to get your own place and move on since you're grown and know better. And then my response was, at the end of the day, we all have our own paths we want to go. and you had the same choice of what path you wanted to take when you were our age, mind you, because he found the church when he was 16, 17, 18 years old, same age as me, what difference, you know? And so you have no room to be mad at us, to want to pursue another path we feel is best for us. And then he says, you're full of crap, but you are going to fail at everything you do. You need to move out, bring my car and keys, and take care of yourself. And then I said, I don't need you. You were never there for me anyways. And then he said, that's in your freaking head. You get your crap and go. I'm gonna treat y'all like N-words now. You park my car and walk. I'm done with you. And then I said, no, please grow up. I will never ever go down to your level of disrespect and ignorance. And then he said, yes, or I will do what the neighbors did and call the police, and no trespassing for you. You are not going to bring that mess back into the house and drag your little brother. And then I said, grow up. And then he said, I'm not playing. And then I said, I'm not playing either. I hope one day you can come to peace in life that I've truly felt with Christ. And let me tell you, like, I think I was really prepared for this day, because during this time, I feel like a huge part of how I handled the situation so well is because I had Christ on my side, and I knew he would provide, y'all. I knew the Lord will always provide, okay? He will always provide. And I just wasn't afraid. I was just like, you know, like, I got this. I had so much confidence in him. And I believe this was a really good, strong week that I had with the Lord, where I was just really consistent, really at it, and I just really felt him there in his presence to comfort me, even though my parents weren't parents in that moment. They were just, I feel like it was definitely something possessing them. Like when I tell you, like, I really do feel like there's another presence in that household over there. Like, it's disgusting. But I remember, like, I called my mom and I was just like, yeah, he's trying to, like, you know, like, kick me out and, like, take all this stuff. And she was just like, well, if that's how you feel and all that stuff, then you can leave if you want to. Then I was like, oh, really? That's what I've been trying to do. And so pretty much by this point, I was at church, but I told her I left home. And then once he started yelling and literally trying to physically come up on me, that's when I had left to go back to church. And I was like, no. So I waited in the bathroom for like 30 minutes, and I waited for the pastor to come out. He was able to connect me with this lovely family. And I like, when I tell you guys, words cannot describe how grateful I am for them so much. I truly would not have made it without them. Family does not have to be people who are blood related to you, but they have stepped up in so many ways for me, which I'm so grateful for. So grateful for. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel worthless. I felt appreciated for my presence. I felt loved. The little girl inside of me, man, was just so excited. And I finally felt like at peace, you know? And like, yes, there was still a lot that I was mentally going through, because it was just like a lot of the changes. I didn't feel like I had to be afraid when I go to sleep. I didn't feel like I had to be on my toes, walking on eggshells, wondering if I need to leave in the middle of the night because I just can't take it anymore. Like all the yelling and chaos. There's so much that has literally happened to me, and near that point something else had happened, and which definitely got me really, really closer with the Lord even more. And just with everything, and you know, and all, like, the Lord really was showing himself to me and was like, I got you, Yolanda. Like, you, like, I hear you. I want to be there for you. I got you, and I'm gonna provide you and bring these people to you. And it's just so great how everything worked out. I ended up moving out the house when I was 17 years old, and I'm currently 18 now. You know, it's a lot with picking up the pieces. But, you know, like I told you guys in that message I sent over, like, I refuse to ever, like, you know, ever, you know, stoop down to the level. And this is my story. I am unashamed of saying it at all, because it shouldn't have to be a thing. And if it's supposed to be meant to be a secret, then it should have not happened at all. Nobody deserves this at all. Nobody. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, you know, the things that I had to go through. But it is part of my testimony. You know, I'll admit, like, I have fallen short in college. I've still, you know, kind of indulged in some things where it's just not like me. But I was just sad. I was coping, you know. It's not the version of myself I want to be. God is still working, you know, inside of me. But I still choose him. I trust that he's got it all worked out. You know, I know I may not know what my life is gonna look like. Like, I have goals for myself, but you know, for some things in my life, it's like I don't know what that's gonna look like in the next few years and all. But I trust that he's got a plan, he's got a way, you know. And I may not be in the best situation now, but I'm getting better. I'm healing. I'm surrounding myself by good people, and I've been going to church and doing all these things to really heal, you know, to work on myself, to learn and to grow, to become the best version of myself, because I refuse to let this pain, to let this trauma and all the things that I went through to define me. I don't want you to look at this, me and my story, and just be like, oh yeah, like, this is this broken girl, she's in this vulnerable position, yada yada yada. Like, you know, I don't want you to view me in that sense. Even though I told you guys my story, but like, that's not who I am. Like, I'm the strong girl who is defeating the odds, and I refuse to follow into the generational cycle of like abuse, to be honest. Let's be real, that a lot of the things I went through was just, it was just disgusting, it was horrible, you know. But I refuse to ever stoop down to that level. That is not who I am. That's not what I want to be. That's not what I want to associate myself by. And at the end of the day, you know, I wish all well and good things to my parents. You know, like, I definitely, like, am still healing, but have, you know, definitely forgiven that part, because just like the Lord has forgiven me, like, I want to extend that towards them too, because I refuse to hold this on my heart, to let it destroy me, to let it just like break me even more. Like, y'all, like, when I tell you, like, God, I know he's moving, he's doing some things for me, and I know, like, this past few days, like, I've been so inconsistent, and I really, like, need to, like, lock in more of the Lord. But at the end of the day, like, I know that he's always going to be there for me, and for you guys though too. And it's something that I'm definitely, like, working at, is just really trying to build my connection with him, because he's truly the way. You know, that's my testimony to you guys, is that, like, when all is lost, when the world, like, literally feels like it's falling down, when people that are supposed to, like, you know, like, be like, you know, when all people fail, just know that he's always there, always 100% there for you. You know, he has got your back, man. He really has your back. People are gonna fail you, they're gonna say things and yada yada yada. Like, life's gonna happen, right? And it's sad and it sucks and it's unfortunate, and it's just like, at the end of the day, I was just a kid, you know what I'm saying? I was just a kid. But he has renewed, he has changed me, my heart, you know, and he's continuing on to do great things, and I know he can do the same thing for you too. You are worth to be saved by him, you know what I'm saying? Even when I fell short, you know, like, he showed me that, like, you're never too far to get back to him. And as long as I'm here breathing, alive each day, like, I want to choose him, and I want to really live the purpose that he has for me, even though I don't know what that is yet. But I trust him, because I know he will always provide. He will always provide in ways that you can't even imagine, because I surely didn't know what he had in store. It took many years, y'all. It took many years trying to leave, and he finally allowed for for it to happen, and it worked out perfectly. It didn't happen in my timing. I was like, God, where are you at? I was in rock bottom multiple times in my childhood. I was like, Lord, I just need you to save me from this. And he finally did. And I'm in such a good position now. And I owe it all to you, Lord, for that. And so that's my story, my real raw story of leaving the Mormon church and the real effects. And so the people, I know there's this one person commented about things in my video, and truly, I think also, you know, it just comes down to like experiencing the people, and like, you know, like it wasn't just like my parents that of course influenced that, but definitely a lot of things like within the church that had happened though too. And I don't know, it just wasn't for me, and I think that's okay. And so if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerned, or if you want to reach out, going through the same thing, like, I got you, you know. I want to be that person that I wish I had during that time, and so I hope that I can be that for you guys if you ever need anything. But that's my story, y'all, and I hope you guys have a blessed rest of the day. God loves you, and I do too. Peace is already out. Okay, so basically, post me editing, of course, I've been working on editing this for like 3 weeks. I'll be honest, I listened to it probably 20 times, like nearly almost every single day, just to make sure that like everything is just on point. But I think a really good point that I failed to miss is why I believe it to be a cult. Okay, so I feel like overall this religion, it's very like, it's either one way or not. And I get it, like that's like with any religion, it's like, you know, you either follow the rules or it's like you're either in or you're out, you know. But I think what they really promote is like collective thinking, and it's like the high commitment that, you know, is necessary to even be in it. It's just so much, and the fact that it could have so much influence. Now I know it's not for everybody the case. I know some people that leave the church that their parents might leave with them, or if their parents are still in and they're out, that they're more supportive. But for me, that wasn't the case. And I think that if it can come to the point that it has so much influence that a parent can choose their religion over a child, that there's just something wrong with that. And I think that you don't truly understand what you are in until you get out of it. And for me, my eyes opened once, you know, I was able to see both sides. And so truly, that's why I believe it to be a cult, is the fact that it had to get to that point, and the fact that, you know, the things that happened to me, you know, as I go into this story, and just like how my parents treated me, like it's truly not by God, the things that they believe they were called to do and all. That's my story.